welcome to Blackbriar Gaming. For all those amazing people who regularly tune into my ramblings, you've perhaps noticed I haven't put anything out recently. Not Heresy, not Old World. And that's because I have been just all in on a new TCG called Star Wars Unlimited. If you don't know what that means, it means gambling. Gambling with pretty Star Wars cards. I'm so deep in that I haven't thought about a miniature for months. But I miss making content, so here we are. If you're new to Star Wars Unlimited, we are currently in a phase at the end of Set 1 and coming up to the release of Set 2, Shadows of the Galaxy. We have about 70% of the cards revealed for the next set, and I am just so freaking hyped. We've had 2 new cards in particular drop over the last 24 hours that have pushed a deck I've been working away on into the next level. It is looking tight. So I thought I'd jump on, take you through the deck, my choices, and how it plays. The deck is, as you're very aware by now, Cad Bane Aggression. And it's just so much fun. So let's get into it. So, when going through decks, I like to look at the ground units, the space units, then the events, and the upgrades. That's just how my mind works, because that's how you build it in SWODB. So, we've got the deck here in front of us. Obviously, the leader is Cad Bane, who I just really love. I not only love the character, I love the ability, I love his stats, I love what he's doing, I love the colors that he's in and that he wants to play with. We didn't really have a great aggression and cunning deck for villains in Set 1. Boba pretty much never saw play with red. It was very much with green and with yellow. Thrawn was doing his own weird control things that wasn't that much popular, and I can't for the life of me even remember what the other leader was for yellow villain. In fact, I'm gonna have to look it up now live as I'm talking. You may hear my mouse clicking away as I do so. Can't believe I forgot it. There wasn't one. That's why I can't remember it, because we didn't have one. It was only the 2, because of course it wasn't Vader or Luke. So there we go. That's that. So Boba and Thrawn never really interacted with aggression, but I just love the aggression and cunning duo. I love playing it with heroes. Sabine Yellow and Han Red were 2 things that I played frequently throughout Set 1, but now I get to just absolutely push it with villain, which I'm very excited about, because at heart I am a villainous Star Wars fan. And Cad Bane gives us just the perfect excuse to do it. So his ability, as I'm sure you're aware, is to ping damage. That is, when you play an Underworld card, if he's on his non-deployed side, his leader side, let's say, he can do a damage once per phase. And once he's deployed onto the table, he can do 2 damage when you play an Underworld card. It doesn't sound that meaningful, especially because your opponent gets to choose it, but it really adds up and it really makes the rest of your cards better. It allows you very much to control the board while also pushing damage onto an enemy's base, just in the way that it creates awkward trades for your opponent, or it allows your direct damage ability and your ambushing to be that much more impactful. So let's go through the cards. The base. We'll talk about the base as well. We've gone with Tarkin Town because the ability to just wipe out a unit, essentially their turn 1 play. So as Cad Bane, you're always wanting to go second, unless there's a really good reason why you wouldn't. Maybe against a control deck you wouldn't, but against a mid-range or an aggro deck, you would very much want to go second, because that'll make sure that no matter what you're playing for your turn 1 play, you will be able to put a damage onto your opponent's unit. And then you can, unless of course it was shielded, you can, or they don't play a unit, you can just wipe that unit off with Tarkin Town, no matter essentially what it is at a 1 or 2 cost. I don't think we have any 5 health 2 drops. Maybe we do. Maybe Dr. Pershing is the alternative to that rule, and of course things with shield become awkward. But the concept here is that you put a damage and you just wipe that unit right from the start. So you're then starting with board advantage, which just carries through for the rest of the game when it comes to CAD. You can hold back if that unit they've put down isn't going to threaten you or be particularly meaningful, and you're happy to hold on to it and use it on something a bit more meaty and a bit more important later in the game, but certainly using it to wipe their first turn unit if you can, if it's not shielded or if it's not an outrageous health, then go for it, would be my advice, and go second when you play the game. And it's so nice to play a deck that's really happy to go second as well. There's a few decks out there where if you don't get that first turn, and that initiative to begin with, that then of course can carry on for at least the next 2 or 3 turns. If you and your opponent are playing in a certain way, they can hurt. It can make a 5 to 10% swing. I did see a really, really good analysis video by, I think it's Cloud9 or whatever his name is, the YouTuber that does some really in-depth analysis of events, and he actually had the percentages up for going first versus going second, which was really cool. It's the first time I've seen that. And there was often between a kind of 3 to 10% swing in favor of the person that went first in the first game out of 3 in a tournament setting. So it does make a difference in those tight games where, the decks are pretty well matched. It makes a difference. And this deck not having to go first and not even wanting to go first, I think is really cool. It makes it a bit of an outlier and really interesting for tournament play. So let's get into it. What kind of deck is this? I would describe it as a mid-range tempo. Now, I'm not a card game expert. I'm just going to put it out there. This is really an adventure for me over the last few months, getting into card games. I played a lot of Destiny back in the day, but I wouldn't describe that as a real card game. It was just a lot of fun. So all these terms that I've been learning over the last few months, aggression, mid-range, beatdown, it's been an adventure. It's been a wild ride. I've learned a lot, and I'm super keen to impart that on new players. And hopefully, if I do get anything wrong, you will pull me up in the comments and correct me. But I would describe this as a mid-range tempo deck, which is the kind of deck I love playing. I was one of those jerks really pushing Boba Yellow over the last couple of months, not 1 month, I guess, at store showdowns, and I did really well with it. Was that I enjoy that playstyle, and Cad Bane does it in spades because the units are not only super aggressive, they're at the same time doing damage in the way that he's pinging things, and in the way that you can play around an amazing event called McClunky, which we'll get into later when I get to events. So let's start with the ground units. Here we go. We've looked at the leader, we've looked at the base. We've described the type of deck it is, mid-range tempo, which means essentially that you're trying to outpace your opponent. You're trying to put your opponent behind in their ability to compete, in their pacing, while at the same time pushing damage, having both controlling the board and pushing damage onto base. So, ground units, let's do it. We'll start at the 1 cost. So we've got Greedo here. Greedo, fantastic. 3-1, just amazing. He's got Underworld. He's got Bounty Hunter as well, which hasn't really been relevant until now. We'll talk about one of the events that I play here that makes that relevant. But having a 1 cost Bounty Hunter is kind of cool. He's so good. His ability to deal 2 damage when he's destroyed. Noting that we don't have many events in here, don't rely on that, but it can just do some crazy stuff. But putting him down, and the reason he's so good in this deck is because you have another 1 cost that you really want to see first turn. Lady Proxima. Some people are really excited about this, some are not. I personally am, and I've been playing her in a lot of my villain decks and would never leave home without her in an Underworld deck. When you play another Underworld card, you may deal 1 damage to a base as many times as you want within a phase, which is crazy. So the optimal play for this deck is very much to end up with Greedo and Lady Proxima in your hand, and being able to play both of them turn 1. And then even if you are forced to go first by your opponent because they're trying to get around your ping, you can still sneak it in, right? So you play Lady Proxima first. You don't worry about pinging the damage because your opponent hasn't played a unit yet if they've forced you to go first. You then play Greedo after they've played a unit. You still then get your ping, which feels amazing. And at the same time, you do a cheeky damage to their base in that first turn. And then you just keep doing it, forcing your opponent to having to deal with a 4 health 1-drop unit. It's just rude. They hate doing it, especially aggro decks, and it's not that easy for a lot of decks, and they'd much rather be taking out Greedo than having to deal with Lady Proxima. But you have to. Just FYI, if you're playing against this deck, you have to deal with Lady Proxima, otherwise she will do 5 to 6 damage to your base over the game, which is just crippling. So that's dropping them. Turn 1 is kind of the optimal turn 1 play, both Greedo and Lady Proxima, and going from there. Other ground units, let's see, as we go up the curve. Next, we've got Dr. Evazan, a new unit for this set. It is a 3-3 shielded with a bounty that allows your opponent to ready up bulk resources. This is such a dangerous card. I keep putting it in and out of the deck. I've put it back in now because I just think the potential here, if we're going to be a bit more aggressive, the potential is really, really good. Now, Crafty Smuggler would be a much safer choice, but not nearly as much fun. You have to, I think, make sure you don't get greedy with Dr. Evazan. So when you have the opportunity to trade it into your opponent and kill him off where it would not give them a resource advantage, let's say they've claimed, they have no cards in hand, or they've got full resources up, just swing him in and kill him off after you've done a bit of damage and you've had your fun with them while you can, because otherwise I've played some test matches where the opponent is on, they've spent 5 resources and they then take him out and they stand those 5 up, and that loses you the game. So don't get greedy with him. Get him out of there when you need to, or if you need to, if he's about to die and you've got a cheeky McClunky sitting there ready to go, pull him back and hide him away, or bring him back out shielded to protect yourself and protect that resource potential of your opponent. But a 3/3 for 2 who's shielded, insane. Absolutely insane turn 1 drop. The other 2-cost ground unit that I've got in here is Bazine Natal. I think she is really good. She has Smuggle 4, which is also why I like her. So whenever I draw her, I very often put her down into the resource pile, because paying 4 for her in the 5th or 6th turn feels really good to be able to take out your opponent's units. What does she do? When played, look at the opponent's hand. You may discard one of those cards. If you do, that player draws a card. So even as a turn 1 play, you don't feel that bad about it, because if you are going first, you take out their turn 1 play. Even if you're going second, you take out their 2-turn play, and now they have to really hope that they draw into a 3-cost, right? So I think she's good against all kinds of decks, aggro, mid-range, or control, probably especially control. She does some serious works, and she allows you to just disrupt their hand in a way that is kind of repeatable if you keep putting it back into your hand with McClunky. It's cheeky, and I love it. Noting that Xanadu Blood, which we'll get to later, can also put units back to your hand, so it's a bit of a theme, and I've played Bazine 3 or 4 times in one game, and it just absolutely messes with your opponent. So they are my 2-cost ground units. Going into 3, we only have one, and that is Boba Fett. He continues in set 2 to be absolutely dominating. The ability here, and I only realized he did this hours, maybe less than 24, that's for sure. Less than 24 hours before the first showdown that I went to, I discovered that a leader, as it deploys, never counts as having entered the battlefield, because it's constantly on the battlefield, even when it's in its leader what's the word I'm looking for here? Kind of phase. It's leader transformedness. Words are hard. But essentially, if a leader deploys and you've got Boba Fett out and they only have 6 health, and Han Solo being a great example, Leia being another one, essentially, and there's plenty more coming in set 2. But if they then use that leader and don't kill Boba Fett and your Boba Fett's still standing, you can swing into their leader and kill it. And often they're only doing 4 damage back, because the leader counts as being on the battlefield the whole time, so that when they exhaust on the first turn that they deploy, you are still attacking an exhausted unit that didn't enter play. So you get to deal 3 damage to the defender on attack, and then do Boba Fett's damage as well. So his ability to kill up to 6 health leaders on the turn they deploy is just so very, very good. And for that reason, I think you will see him in Cunning Villain decks for a long time. If you don't have any of these cards coming into set 2, make sure you grab him. He is definitely worth it, and he's not too expensive at the moment. He's come down a little. So there we go. That is 3-cost ground units. Moving into the 4-cost. So now we get into the cards that have recently been revealed, and that I think have just pushed this deck into wild territory. So it is Forlom and Zuckuss. Now they work together, Forlom being a 4/4/4 ambush, and his ability is that each friendly unit named Zuckuss gets +1 and gains ambush. So if you're playing Forlom into Zuckuss on curve, you're just going to be doing some wild shenanigans. He has Underworld, which is great. He has Bounty Hunter, which is great, and we'll talk about that in a while. He then rolls into Zuckuss, who is a Saboteur, 6/6 for 5, which is really good, getting 12 worth of stats for a 5-cost. This is Poe level goodness, right? That everyone's losing their mind about. Well, you've got your own little guy, and they're both, so Poe's legendary, I'm pretty sure. These guys, they're just uncommons. They're just cheeky uncommons. That's fine. He has Saboteur, great, an amazing ability, I think, in this second set. We're going to see a lot of shields and a lot of sentinels being pushed around. So I think Saboteur is going to be really handy in this edition. And each friendly unit, his ability, named Forlom, gets +1/+1 and gains Saboteur. Now, Zuckuss, if you've got Forlom out and you may well do. He then Zuckus gains ambush and +1/+1. So you're now paying 5 for a 7/7 that's ambushing with Saboteur and buffing up a unit that you've got on the table. Absolute madness. I'm so into it, and I can't wait to start playing with it. I think it's going to be so good. And it's just on curve. It's easy to do as long as you have the cards in your hand, that being the tricky part. So that is 4 and 5 cost ground units there. Once again, Zuckus has Underworld and Bounty Hunter as well, both relevant. Then we have Bosk, also Underworld, Bounty Hunter. Do I have any non-Underworld units in this deck? I don't think so. No, I do not. And I would go that way, honestly, when building a Cad Bane deck. You get away with a few, but I don't know why you would. Just losing the ability to get that ping off each turn, wouldn't do it, especially when he's deployed. 2 damage. Ugh. Now, Bosk. Bosk is just so good. He has not been outclassed in any way in set 2 at this stage, noting we've only seen 70% of the cards. But he's wild, because he ambushes in. Great, sure. But then, when you play an event, you may deal 2 damage. Now, this is where I'm going to really talk about McClunky, because this is a stage that it matters. So, this is what you do. You've got Bosk out. Great. And let's say Greedo's out as well. Sure. What you get to do... Oh, and you've got Cad Bane out. Wild. Now, McClunky has Underworld. So by playing McClunky, you kick that Greedo back to your hand. You are dealing 3 damage from McClunky. You are dealing 2 damage from Bosk, which says when you play an event, you may deal 2 damage to a unit. And then on top of that, because McClunky is an Underworld card, you get to trigger Cad Bane's ability that does 2 damage to a unit as well. So in total, you get to do 7 damage to a unit. Now, 2 of those damage are at your opponent's choice, but you get to decide the order of these things happening. So you can really mess with your opponent. You can move that damage around to take out a couple of different units if you want. It is just so good. Or as I used it recently in a test match, I just got to take out Poe just in one hit. Just took him out, and it felt so amazingly good from a 1-cost event by just having some units on the board that you really want to have on the board at that stage. So, absolutely fantastic. I can't talk about how good Bosk is in this deck. He is indispensable because of that when you play an event ability and the shenanigans that you can get off with McClunky. So that is all of my ground units. I've capped it out at 5, so staying pretty low to the ground, but doing a nice curve. I find that this deck really kills your opponent and finishes off their base if you're playing it well on that kind of 5th, 6th turn. So I didn't want to go too much harder than 5 cost for units. I do push it up into 6 into space, and let's now talk about the space units. So starting off, we have the Cartel Spacer. I don't love it. I was playing with the new Underworld Grey, kind of neutral space unit that we saw that is a 3/2, but then lets your opponent take it for 4. I had it taken from me, and it didn't feel great. It didn't lose me the match, but it didn't feel great. And meanwhile, your Cartel Spacer, sure, it's coming down at 2/3, but with that Bosk ping, so let's say you're playing it against an opponent's A-Wing, by pinging that damage, it means you're still trading in with the Cartel Spacer. So I think Cad Bane makes the Cartel Spacer and its 2 damage feel a lot better than it would otherwise, and that it does in Boba Fett yellow decks at the moment. So I'm kind of happy with the Cartel Spacer. Same. The ability, if you control another cunning unit, exhaust an enemy unit that costs 4 or less, very relevant here. You will see that all but 2 of my units are cunning, because cunning is amazing. So Cartel Spacer, it's going to be getting that ability off, and as this is a bit of a tempo deck, that ability, it is important, and it does do something, and it's a bit of a theme when we start talking about Xanadu Blood as well. So that's Cartel Spacer. Is it optimized at the moment, and is it great? I don't think so, but it's doing what I want to be doing at the moment, and I'm okay with it. I think it's probably the weakest choice in the list, and it will come in and out, I have no doubt. The next space unit going up the curve to 3 is Punishing One, a 3/4 for 3. Just solid stats, people. I mean, that's Millennium Falcon, right? That's then costing you a resource to keep around the board. It has that Underworld keyword. Is it called a keyword? I'm not sure. How do we describe that? Either way, it's an Underworld card, which is obviously very relevant. And when an upgraded enemy unit is defeated, you may ready this unit. Use this ability only once each round. Is this going to come off a lot? Maybe, maybe not. We do have one cheeky little bounty in this deck. I don't think you're gonna find that happening a lot, but when it does, it's gonna feel really good, and especially because it's doing then pretty much what Millennium Falcon's doing, but without any of the downsides. What a great card. But anyway, a 3/4 for 3 in space. Happy with it. My last space unit is Xanadu Blood, a 6 cost. Now, is this as good as Fire Spray? In a Boba Fett deck? No. In this deck? Sure. So obviously Fire Spray is absolutely out of control. It's too good. It's a crazy good finisher, but it doesn't work in this deck because just relying on Boba Fett, the unit, to be sticking around when you play that card is just not going to happen. People are going to make sure that doesn't happen. So it doesn't really come in ready, and at that point you're paying 6 for a 5/6, and that doesn't really do much else except, I guess, exhaust as well. So it's still good. It's still good, and people may, in fact, even play Fire Spray in this list over Xanadu Blood just because of how good it is, even when it's not coming in ready. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what people decide on. But I've decided to go with Xanadu Blood, keep the theme going. We're going for a bit of a narrative here because, look, it does hit for 6 instead of 5. So when it's attacking into a Fire Spray, which I assure you will happen in many games, it is better. It will take the Fire Spray out and not die in return, but it does have to be attacking because it is that raid 2 there and only having the base power of 4. But its ability, when played and on attack, you may return another friendly non-leader underworld unit to its owner's hand, and if you do, exhaust an enemy unit or a resource. I believe I can't see the bottom of that card because the 3's over it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it does. Now, exhausting a resource can be really good. It can be absolutely crippling and mess up your opponent's plans in beautiful ways, especially because you've probably seen their hand with Bazine at some stage. But even exhausting a unit also feels pretty fantastic. It lets you pop units back into your hand. Greedo and Lady Proxima, they're going to be out there. They're going to be coming back into your hand and then be playing again for cheap. You're kind of okay with it. It allows you to play more Underworld cards later on to keep that ping damage going, so you don't hate it too much. You won't always be able to do it, but when you do, it's going to feel really good because it's just going to exhaust an enemy unit at any cost, not with the restriction of Cartel Spacer being 4 or less. It can just, they're 6 drop, they're 7 drop that they're getting ready to swing in with. You just play Xanadu's Blood and just shut it down because it's when played. So that's really nice. So I think it's good. I think Xanadu's Blood is super solid. I don't think it's broken. I don't think it's overpowered, but it's a really solid choice for this list. So that is the space units, Cartel Spacer, Punishing One, and Xanadu Blood. Getting into the events, McClunky, I've already talked about. Just outrageous. It's really good. You're going to see it in so many decks. I don't think I need to talk about it more. No Good To Me Dead was a bit of a late addition that I chucked in here, and I wasn't including it. Originally, I had a few more ground units, but I'm like, you know what? I have used this card to such amazing effect throughout set 1 and the season, that I think I need it in here. Its ability to just keep a leader down for 2 turns is just so good, and it adds the tempo to this mid-range tempo deck. It's what really puts your opponent behind. So I think a 3 of, super important against opponent mid-range and aggro decks. Just Sabine. Sabine comes out and you just shut her down for 2 turns. So good. So I've decided to include it here. We'll wait and see if that remains as a 3. Once I start playing around with the sideboard here, I dare say that'll be going in and out of the sideboard depending on who I'm playing against. Next into the events, I've got 2 sneak attacks. Now, I've never loved or used to any huge extent sneak attack because I never needed to because I had the Fire Spray. But I think in this deck it's going to be really important. I think sneak attacking a Xanadu Blood to exhaust an opponent's unit and finish out the game for a cheeky 6 into their base is going to be really relevant and really important to be able to do. So I'm keen on it. I've only included 2. That's my 2 of in this deck. We'll wait and see if it sticks around. That's probably another one of the weaker ones that may come in or may go because it doesn't always work. Surprise Strike is just an absolute staple of any cunning deck. I probably wouldn't leave home without it if I'm running yellow. And Relentless Pursuit is the real spice here. So this is a 3 cost from the new set. Choose a friendly unit. It captures an enemy non-leader unit that costs the same or less than unit. If the friendly unit is a bounty hunter, give a shield token to it. Now, you will notice that we've got a lot of bounty hunters in this deck. In fact, we have them across the curve except for the 2-cost. Greedo, we have Boba Fett, Forlom, Bosk, Zuckuss, all bounty hunters, and of course Cad Bane, our leader, is a bounty hunter as well. So that gives us a 1-cost, a 3-cost, 4-cost, 5-cost, and our leader 6-cost bounty hunters to get Relentless Pursuit off. And being able to give a shield onto your leader out of nowhere while capturing a unit under it just feels really good. So I think capturing is going to be quite popular. People are a bit iffy about it at the moment, but I think it's good. And once again, that tempo thing that we're talking about here, the mid-range tempo that we want to try and be doing, capturing units really contributes to that. It's almost like a 3-cost and just remove what you want and add a shield. That seems really good. Now, it's not what you want. It does have to cost the same or less, which is why playing it on your leader feels really good, because they're at the top of the curve when they come out, and you can put them on the board and still play this in the same turn. So that is the last of my events. Not too heavy on the events there. We want to make sure we have a lot of units on the board to push damage as quickly as possible. Now, the last card in this deck is Guild Target. Just the one bounty, because this one is that you deal 2 damage to a base if the unit that this is on and that you defeat or capture, I might say, is just a regular unit, but if it's a unique unit, you deal 3 damage instead. Now, Hero Aggro decks, there we go, have just been absolutely reliant on For a Cause I Believe In, and that often only gets 3 damage. I've played it a bunch of times, got 3 damage out of it, and I'm still kind of okay with it, and it costs 3. Here we're playing a 0-cost. Defeating units is not something that's difficult for us with all the damage that we're pinging around, with Tarkentown, with McClunky, with all the shenanigans we're doing. Relentless Pursuit kicks it off as well, because capturing kicks off your bounties. So it's a good deck to have bounties in, and this one's probably my favorite, because you're just getting pretty much a free For a Cause I Believe In off in a villain deck. That is really meaningful, and it does make a difference. So that is the deck, Cad Bane Aggression. There are other versions of Cad Bane, both within Aggression and within other aspects. I saw a Cad Bane Command deck today, which I thought was really spicy, but I guess at that stage, Boba Green is probably doing that better, whereas Boba Red is not doing what this deck is doing. I think this takes it to the next level. I think this is going to be really competitive. I think it's going to be really common and popular. So learning this deck, how to play against it and how to play with it, I think will be important. And that brings us to the end of our Unlimited chats for today. Thank you so much for watching. My plan is to keep the Star Wars Unlimited content coming, so if you enjoyed this video, go on ahead and subscribe for more coming soon. Importantly, make sure to keep cracking those packs and getting unleashed for Unlimited.